Aiden has coached me. It's almost roughly about just under 2 years ago, and has helped me in leaps and bounds with quite a number of these things that I'm going to touch on now. But Aiden has coached 16 Two-Comer Club award winners and has helped them to achieve those levels. He's also helped over 700 plus coaches, consultants, and service providers in various niches, which means he comes with a wealth of experience and knowledge, connecting with these coaches and consultants and online entrepreneurs every single day with their personal challenges, with their business challenges, with their sales challenges, with their marketing challenges, with clarity on their purpose, helping them, showing genuine and sincere, and I mean, you'll pick it up from his demeanor, just like sincere engagement. And he's also helped many others to become consistent six-figure earners. So without further ado, one of my favorite guys, Aiden Frazier, I welcome you to come and woo our audience. Tell us your story. I'm going to drop my presentation and over to you.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you, brother. And thank you everybody for who's here. You know, you're investing your time, your attention, and your energy ultimately. And just go ahead and remove some of the distractions, take away the bookmarks here, and let's go ahead and put this in full screen mode. So are you guys able to see this? I have a giant monitor, so hopefully you can see this. If you can, just put a 1 in the chat and I'll know that it's okay, the view. All right, perfect. Thank you, Naeem. Appreciate that. Okay, so I definitely want to be as helpful as I can and give context as well. I think that's something that kind of lacks quite a bit, unfortunately, across the spectrum of online coaching, consulting, you know, people who are course creators, various niches. It's always this like rags to riches story, and you don't always get what's in between. You don't always get the intangible components. It's this emphasis or this focus on, I went from 0 to 50K, or I was homeless and this thing happened, right? You guys see it bombarded inside of all these Facebook groups and posted on Facebook, plastered against everybody's profiles, right? Especially if you're connected to a ton of other people who are in competing niches and, you know, adjacent fields to yourself, where it's this focus on the viral transformation post or the milestone, right? All the shiny and the glittery side of things. But I put this quote here by Dale Carnegie because he wrote this book, you know, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it's been massively helpful to me. I've read it multiple times. And one of the quotes that he said is, develop success from failures. Discouragement and failure are two of the surest stepping stones to success. So I think it's wonderful because Farouk's already kind of touched on, you know, over the past couple of days and then reinforced it for you guys a bit, that mindset really is everything. What is going on between your ears is going to make or break whether or not you succeed, how you show up in life, ultimately your priorities, right? And I labeled this presentation My Path to 100K because I didn't think that it would be fair or right, given the context and my, you know, understanding of the field of online coaching and consulting. It would not be fair for me to give a blanket statement saying this is the only path to get to 100K. That's incongruent and not fair to any of you, right? Some of you have a couple clients that may or may not pay you, and a few of you have clients that it maybe unpredictably have in fact paid you, right? Whether that's 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, or whatever the number. But one thing that I have discovered in my time, as we're going to get into, in my time of coaching at this point, gosh, Farouk mentioned it's over 700, and I haven't gone to double check. I'm a person who's like very data driven, and I'm a big fan of, I need to fact check this. So I'm pretty sure it's above 752, but I don't know. So just to be safe, we're going to stick with above 700 people. And I have found a pattern. Okay. And that pattern that I have discovered is that every one of us, myself included, often have this tendency to perceive that $1 million is the end all be all. $1 million is the holy grail in a business or our net worth or whatever, right? The marker of I've made it. I'm successful. I'm a good person. My business is doing wonderful. But the reality is, in order to make $1 million in a year, there are a couple of things other than mindset. Yes, strategy is important, but there are a couple of things also along that path or that journey that I have encountered, that I have found in this pattern of working with all these other very successful people in various niches with, lots and lots of lucrative opportunities, and them achieving the $1 million, the 2 Comma Club award, right? In reality, it's not $100K per month. It's actually something like $83,500 or something. Like, again, I'm not a mathematician. There is a reason I'm a coach. I am not an accountant, but you guys can do the math. You go take $1 million and put it on your calculator and divide it by 12. And there you go. You have the number, right? So already ingrained in our mind, we have this shiny object syndrome that is just immediately plastered everywhere of, I need to get to 50K. I need to get to 100K. And there are these big numbers that are getting thrown around. And it's really easy, especially if you're at the start of your journey and you don't have predictability in your client acquisition, or you have gaps and maybe you have a lot of them, and that's okay because everybody has to start somewhere, right? Farouk mentioned a little bit ago to me earlier this past week that several of the clients that he has worked with and a few of the people who have decided to join into this challenge are what I would consider a starter. And so I feel like if that's you, right, you're a person who absolutely gets less than 5 clients or 10 clients per month, then the thing you're going to get out of this presentation is not me telling you this is the right way to do organic marketing. The thing you get out of this presentation is not going to be me telling you, if you post this type of hook, this thing is going to happen. That is not what I'm going to talk about or focus on. The thing I'm going to focus on is what you need to get you to your goal, whatever that might be, whether that's 40 or 50K or 80K or 100K, because those 750 plus individuals that I have coached and worked with very closely in a one-to-one capacity and also a group setting, okay, you would be shocked to realize that even those individuals still have another demarker in their mind that is what they really are aiming for. For example, I've had a couple mastermind clients previously, they're like 40 to 80K, and they're like, how do I get to 100? How do I get to 200? And again, strategy is important, but there's also this state of being, your essence, your mindset, and your beliefs and your convictions and the way you show up in your content and in your business and the habits you have that is going to decide whether or not you succeed in your journey. So let me go ahead and I think I just click. There we go. Okay, cool. First time using Canva, so I'm figuring it out as we go. So a little bit about me. Obviously, you guys can see the Ferrari here, beautiful car, right? And my story is, I think, very basic in the very beginning. Oftentimes you kind of see individuals say, oh, I'm not special, or, and that's kind of like how their story starts. I would like to reframe that by saying there was nothing extraordinary about the start of my entrepreneurial journey. Okay. I had gone to university. I went to go get a traditional 9-to-5 job. I went to go work in the corporate environment for AT&T. It's a really big telecommunications company in where I used to live in Texas and across the United States. And unfortunately, I thought I was safe, right? I thought I had a safety net, had a 401k, job security, et cetera. And then unfortunately, something shifted for that business, and they ended up making the decision to close. So I ended up getting laid off, and it kind of shifted this thought process that I had, because my thought process, like everyone else in general, right? Money's nice, money's good to have, and it can make your life comfortable, right? So I deep down growing up, I really wanted to be rich. We weren't poor, we weren't broke, and I was never homeless. But sometimes there were things I really wanted. And as I got older and went to college and all of that, sure, there were people who were better off than myself, right? So I already had it in my mind of, I want to be the person driving the Porsche. I want what they have, right? Not realizing like what I already had going in my current situation and appreciating that. Okay. But because of, I think, that being my start, the way my identity was ultimately kind of formed and molded, it also influenced some of my habits and decisions that came after I got laid off. I made the decision, well, if this job isn't going to work out for me, then let me go ahead and pursue maybe courses or something, right? And I ended up deciding I'm going to build an agency. Okay. But unfortunately, because of the habits that I had formed and making that decision internally for myself, my quality world looks like this. I'm going to drive this Porsche. My life will look this one way. But I'm not going to wake up at 4 a.m. or 6 a.m. or I'm not going to do the extra thing that I technically should to make my entrepreneurial journey easier for myself, because that would mean that it's going to be hard right now. That would mean it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. So I hopped from program to program, buying course after course after course, joining challenge after challenge after challenge. Okay. I probably at this point, I would have to fact check to be like 100% certain, but I know deep down that I absolutely, when I include college, I have spent well over 250 grand of my own money. Okay. And all of that to tell you that it took me a really long time and a lot of money and a lot of energy and many years, excuse me, to recognize that shiny object syndrome is actually the thing that became a plague and kind of prolonged my ability to succeed faster, right? Because I kept thinking, if I just go based off the screenshots and the marketing and this nice case study or whatever it is, then I'll also have those results if I just invest in this program, or if I just invest in this course, or if I just buy this book. And that's enough. But I didn't realize like the internal component was also necessary. Okay. So unfortunately, I ended up, even though my agency was mildly successful, I was getting clients because I did adhere to a good portion, not all of the modules, but a good portion of what was, ingrained in this one particular program from one of my very first mentors. His name was Adam Davies, and he's still in business, but he does something else now. Anyway, that meant that I got stuck below 6 figures per year. Okay. So I was right around like maybe 6 to 8K per month, essentially. When I ran out of money, I realized something's got to change. If I don't choose something to change, because I can't keep doing the same thing, this isn't working, I'm not making more money. And, I don't want to say I'm materialistic, but I do appreciate nice things, right? But you can't have nice things and you can't afford nice things when you're not able to actually have like predictable income, because you're not adhering to the strategy, because you don't have the right habits formed and the right beliefs and identity necessary to show up as that person who is having the ability to access the nice things, right? It's a very big feedback loop. So the day that I changed, you're seeing this picture of me right here at the airport with my backpack, has my laptop and all the worldly possessions that are important to me in this black duffel bag and this small little, suitcase with wheels. Okay. I was terrified out of my mind. I'm an only child. I ended up leaving to San Francisco. I can't say ultimately, like, why did I pick to go to one of the most expensive cities to live in the entire world? But I just had this thought inside of my mind. If I go to this place that is expensive and shiny, and, there's lots and lots of opportunity because I lived in a small town and I only knew a certain circle of people, and I had just lost my job and many things changed in my life. I was ridden with fear and anxiety and overwhelm and uncertainty, but it was like, what's more painful? Being broke and maybe on the verge of being homeless, possibly, if I don't get my act together and figure things out, or burning all the boats and just changing my environment and finally leaning into, like all those courses said in the first module, design your dream life, change your environment, right? But I didn't really do it. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds nice, but okay, let me just focus on the strategy. And I'm going to tell you, friends, I don't know each one of you individually. Don't know your program. I don't know your offer. I don't know your life situation. And I don't know how hard it might be for you right now, how challenging it might be just to have made the, leap of faith for yourself to listen to this presentation, right? Like that demonstrates commitment all by itself. It can be a scary thing, but think about for yourself, what's harder, staying stuck or deciding to trust yourself, even though it feels scary and it's uncomfortable, to trust yourself enough to do the thing that you need to, whatever that might be, right? So here is this picture after I moved to San Francisco. I couldn't afford furniture, and it's actually something I use often in my own viral transformation posts and my marketing and stuff, right? But it's the truth. I literally slept on the floor. And again, no, I wasn't homeless. Obviously, I could afford an apartment, right? Wasn't the greatest apartment, was real small, like a closet, but I made it work. I knew that I had to make it work. I knew I had to show up for myself, right? And I couldn't even afford salt. I couldn't afford pepper. I couldn't afford salt. I couldn't afford bay leaves, like all these nice things that I used to have as ingredients back home, living with my parents on their couch. That wasn't an option anymore, right? So my income over time slowly increased. I ended up making, I think this first one's a little bit inaccurate. I think it's closer to like 297. I'm going to show you guys in a second, but this demonstrates right here, ultimately a gradual shift, right? Over time. And I'm going to talk in a little bit about how your beliefs and your thought processes and your identity can potentially change, and they will change. They should change over time, especially if you do want to hit 10K, 20K, 50K, whatever the number is in your brain that's important to you. For whatever reason, it's important, right? Nobody's here to judge, and nobody's going to tell you that you're wrong. That's something that you're going to discover when you start interacting with people who are much further ahead in their own journey. The people who are successful and have accomplished much, but started with very little, do not speak out of turn and tell you that you're wrong. They will not hate on you. These are people who will appreciate the fact that you're showing grit and determination, and appreciate that because they know what it's like, So my very first sale, this was evidence for me, like, oh, wow, I actually have something, like somebody's willing to pay me for my expertise. And I, as you can tell, shortchanged myself. I only charged about like $280 to $300. And it gave me confidence. Okay. So in the very beginning, I believe, before we went live in the group, one of the members or the people who were here in the VIP had shared with Farouk about this experience of being able and excited to help people who, need their service, need their coaching, right? But unfortunately, it's like, how do I shift that experience and reframe it where this person is expecting this other thing, whether it's free or very, very low ticket or less than $500? How do I reinforce what my intrinsic value is and the value I bring to the market? Right. And obviously there are some elements there regarding strategy and recognizing you can do it, you get results. There are some of those pieces, yes, but you would be shocked to believe. So I'm going to disclose this, and I know it's recorded and it's fine. My current clients aren't going to make a stink about it, but it's a mindset thing when you just literally double your price. When you literally say out of thin air, my price will be this, whatever it is. Okay. Yes, logistically, there should 100% be value. You're not selling thin air. That's not a good idea. Okay. You're not going to go very far if that's what the approach is. But assuming that you're selling something life-changing, right? Life coaching. There's a multitude of people, but like I've even worked with people like Farouk Nemeth, who is a drummer coach, and he was only selling low ticket courses. And when you can shift in your mind how the gift of music can be life-changing, or being able to, show up for, let's say you're a life coach and you work with moms or something like that, right? Or divorced dads, being able to give something that is priceless to your client, therein justifies the higher price tag. Now, again, there are some pieces in between, but all I'm simply kind of reinforcing here is that you can see there is a huge gap and disparity between when my first client, Stephanie is her name, ended up paying me this, small amount, but it was big to her, right? And it was big to me at the time, $280 something. And then when I ended up getting the next client after that, Dennis, and he paid me $3,500. I'm never going to forget the feeling that I had from working with these initial clients who paid me. And the amount isn't really the thing here. Okay. The thing that I want you guys to realize as the focal point is what happens to you internally when somebody says yes, right? So Farouk had mentioned in the VIP room an example of kind of creating the authority frame and when you're going through the sales process and making sure that everybody's on the same page. And it's very clear that whoever you're interacting with, whether it's by DM or on the sales call, et cetera, or maybe even in person, that they understand you have access to knowledge and skills that they need, and you increase the gap, whatever it is. And that further for them emotionally and logically justifies the price point. And as you can see here on the last tier, yes, the most I've been paid per month by one individual client is in fact over $15,000, right? And the problem I was solving for each of these different clients was literally the same problem. The thing is that's different, me, right? My mindset was different. Yes, sure, there were some different components in the way I delivered the service, and I helped and guided my clients to consult them on whatever was going on for them, right, with their business to grow. But at the core of it, my offer has never really changed. My goal, my vision has never really changed to help people. And Farouk, I think you put it best a little bit ago when you shared with, I believe it was David, that you want to be able to charge whatever it is that's justified and important for you, right? Some people it's 500, other people it's 1,000 or more. You want to be able to charge this because it allows you the opportunity to reinvest into yourself, like getting additional mentoring, hiring, paying for software and build up infrastructure. And if the only thing you're doing is offering your services for free, in the very beginning, that's normal, sure, for case studies. But beyond that, the thing that's got to shift is your mindset, your identity, the way you show up for yourself so that, like this version of Aiden here, who didn't want to be sleeping on the floor, to figure it out and to recognize that you're worth it, right? Okay. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my journey and also be helpful to you all in just a bit regarding the identity. And we're going to do a little exercise. So if David and Asia and Naeem, if you are able, since you're in the VIP room right now, if you're able to go on camera, that would be great. If you can't, I completely understand. So when I was below 10K, these are the things I've realized about my own journey and my identity, okay, and perception of myself. And what happened? When I was below 10K, I made the decision to move away from my environment or change my environment, right? So I'm not saying, David, you need to just like pack your bags and leave and go across the world and go to Bali or wherever. I'm not saying that, right? What I'm actually saying is for some of us, changing our environment can be as simple as, let me go work from a cafe because if I work from my home office, I get distracted. That's the whole reason why I moved into a physical office, right? I started to realize this pattern of me getting kind of complacent and comfortable with the environment I was in. And the goal I have for myself is now much bigger. And I want to make more impact. The only way I can do that is by changing my environment, right? Now, when I was below 30K, but above 10K for myself, I realized that my skills and my habits, ultimately they're intertwined. right? Skills and traits for me weren't the issue. I knew how to do marketing. I'd gone to school for web design. I knew how to serve clients. My background basically in my job with AT&T was customer service. So I didn't have issues there. My issue was believing I was worth it and that I could tell somebody with a straight face, yes, my service to work together is over $8,000. Will that be a problem? Before we even get into talking about how I'm going to help them, right? Because as I'm sure many of you know, some people are going to say, what's the price? What's the budget? What am I looking at? Before you even know their problem, right? How can you diagnose something? I can't give you medicine if I don't know where it hurts, Now, this is going to be where we're going to do an exercise. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen in just a second. But I also ended up writing an anti-goal list. This is a little bit, it sounds counterintuitive, but oftentimes many of us make a laundry list of this is what I want my life to look like. This is what I want to do. This is the car I want to drive. This is what I want to achieve or accomplish by, December of whatever year it is. But it's also just as important. I'm not saying those things are not important. They are. Okay. They influence your North Star, where you end up. But if you don't have an anti-goal list, like I don't want to work 80 hours a week, right? If you don't know what you don't want or what you need to avoid, then as you know, it's like kind of a roller coaster being an entrepreneur. And sometimes some of us have unpredictable months, especially if your only focus is organic. And that's okay, especially in the very beginning. But we have to go into this knowing intuitively that there are going to be ups and downs, right? And if you don't have an anti-goal list, then sometimes when it's really easy for us to lean into the scarcity mindset, when we are below 50K or below 30K or below 10K or whatever number is below where your threshold is for feeling comfortable in your life, right? And paying your bills, then it can be easy to say, well, I'm really desperate. I need that client. I need that cash. And sometimes we're going to push that boundary and change that line in the sand. And that's where the anti-goal list would actually be helpful. Okay, so let's do this exercise. I want everybody to either type on their computer, or you go ahead and get a pen and a piece of paper. Take 1 to 2 minutes to do this. Get that for yourself set up. Let me stop sharing my screen. And we're going to create a North Star. Okay, now this can be anywhere from 1 to 10 sentences. Ideally, it wouldn't be take you longer than like 5 minutes. But I want all of you to take a moment to actually write down. It's 2025, January 1st, 2025. What does your life look like? Where are you? What is happening? Are you married? Maybe you have dogs, and maybe you don't have dogs right now, right? So maybe that's something that you want for yourself. I want you to paint the picture of what your life looks like. So that's what you're writing out, whether it's 1 to 10 sentences. Let's go ahead and do that for the next, 2 to 5 minutes. All right, so we're going to go ahead, start wrapping up if you can. About 30 seconds to a minute left. I have to tell everybody in advance, I already have it, right? I look at it every day. But so if you're still writing, that's okay. Go ahead and complete whatever your thought is, and then you can, lift your head up. Does anybody want to share? You don't have to. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. Obviously, this is like, maybe a little bit unconventional perhaps, but does anybody want to share? Okay, David, go ahead, brother.
Okay, so this is my North Star list. I want to live in Hawaii and have a beautiful home there. I want to travel to Bali. Thank you for mentioning Bali, Ecuador, Colombia, and Africa. I want to return to Peru and Brazil and spend time there. I want to get married again and be a good husband and have a happy, healthy marriage. I want to be a professional musician. I'd also like to write, in addition to writing music, write a lot of poems and write books. I also want to coach and mentor people. I want to have my own retreat center. I want to have a healthy relationship with my ex-wife, and be able to help my son get he needs to have like physical therapy and whatnot. So help him get the support he needs and create a future for my daughter with endless possibilities. I'd like to have a nice car, preferably a SUV with 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. I'd like to keep working with plant medicines. I do shamanic work, so I'd like to continue that. And I'd love to have a good relationship and deepen my relationship with my teachers and mentors. So that's my North Star list.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that. I think it's also important to acknowledge that, like, whenever you're telling somebody what your goal or your vision is, whether, you know, it's your spouse and somebody that you know for a long time in your life, or maybe it's a stranger, right? It's like a first date or something like that. It can be a vulnerable experience, right? Because you literally are sharing, here's what I want my life to look like, but it's not quite there.
Mhm.
Here's what I want for myself, but you know, I'm not that, right?
Yeah.
And there is space for us potentially, I think myself included, to experience some element of dissonance, right? Where you're like, well, I'm not there. So I don't know if it doesn't happen in a month or a year and a half, or maybe it takes you 3 years, right? Because obviously I had you guys date it January 1st, 2025. Let's say that you achieved all of those things by January, you know, whatever day, 2027. It wouldn't change the fact that it's still doable, it's still achievable, right? I just gave you a timeline, right? Because goals with a deadline are the ones that we actually accomplish. Okay. Does anybody else want to share? Anybody else before we continue? Awesome. Selena, please. And then we'll do Naeem.
So January the 1st, 2025, I am still married. My children are away from home at university. I'm living in a larger house than the one I live in now, but not too far away, just over there. My business is well established. It consists of one-to-one coaching within the corporate world, courses for corporates, and also teaching. I put down earning, and I found that really hard. So I am earning 250,000 a year. I made that up, but that's where I was. I spend my other time relaxing, eating well, and exercising. And I have found peace with the loss of my brother.
That's beautiful. Thank you also for being vulnerable and sharing. I appreciate that. You know, a lot of times what I have found is whenever there's like a traumatic experience of some kind that we carry with us, it can benefit many clients eventually down the road, because then we can share and echo through them whatever, you know, we've gone through, share anecdotes, etc. And sometimes that can also serve in a healing capacity. So I'm sorry to hear about your loss, but I think that's really a beautiful goal. David, Selena, thank you both for sharing. Let's go ahead and have Naeem, you know, share. Thank you so much, brother. And then we'll go ahead and continue with the presentation.
All right, cool. So 1st January 2025, I bought my very first house in Cape Town. That's Farouk's hometown. And I went for Hajj pilgrimage in Mecca, and I'm generating $300,000 a month, living on my own terms, financial time and location freedom. And I have helped over 1,000 people basically change their lives to help them to achieve their financial goals. And yeah,
I love that. I think that's great.
Doing all of this for my daughter as well. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. So thank you, Naeem, for sharing. I love the fact also that you ended up sharing, you know, about buying a home and stuff. Oh, Asia. Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully I said your name correctly. Yes.
Hi, you did, but when you're done, you can continue and after.
Oh, okay. Okay. No problem. We will definitely circle back, because I would love to hear what yours is. And then Farouk as well. You know, I think it would be important. Okay. So the thing that I wanted to kind of connect the dots with, and then this will lead us into the next component of the presentation here, is that something that is a common thread through all of what you have shared, right? And possibly even Farouk and possibly Asia and myself, is that you are realizing nobody said, and probably nobody wrote down, all by myself on an island, making $1 million a year. Everybody talked about somebody else, right? Family, having a significant other, you know, children, maybe even pets, who knows? Buying a home. Obviously, you're going to fill a home with a family normally, right? and breathe life into it. So it's not just a house, not just a like structure, not just a building. And why is this important? This is important because before any one of us say, I want to make $1 million a year, there is something in the back of our mind that is the reason we are saying our goal is 20K, 300K, whatever the number, right? And even though, Selena, you mentioned you made the number up, there is still something ingrained in you that makes you feel like that number is a high number. And I'm not saying it's not, but there is something for you emotionally and logically that is connected to that number that would make you feel safe, right? And not just you, but also create safety for your family and anybody else in your life that's important that you're connected to. So let me pull up the
I'm also
presentation.
British. I'm also British, and we are not good with money.
Oh, I did not know that.
We are
okay,
not.
well.
We are not good at talking about money. No, find it really difficult.
That's so funny that you say that. I have a client who is Australian, and he said to me something similar about how money is just like not really talked about over there.
No.
So I think that's important to take into consideration, right? Like your upbringing, your life, not just your past, whether it's positive or traumatic. All of these things play a role in your experience in the way that you show up in your consulting or your coaching or your course, the way you market yourself, right? So I'm going to keep the screen like this. Hopefully it's okay for you all. I just want to make sure that, I can see it and not everything is like zoomed out too big. So here we are, right? This is me. As you can see, obviously, I'm much older than when I first started, but me being able to achieve above 40K per month, I'm going to tell you something that nobody tells you, or you probably only hear it here and there, and it's a blip on the radar, and then that's it. It's out the window, right? One ear and out the other. And it's that once you make, usually, depending on where you live, but specifically if you live like in the UK, you mentioned that you live in, I'm sorry, where was it again?
In me
British?
in Wimbledon, near the tennis.
Okay, cool.
Wimbledon.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. So if you live in the UK, Great Britain, anywhere basically in North America, so that would include Canada, US, or Australia, China, Japan, right? Some parts of Pakistan as well are well off. So the thing that nobody tells you is if you do in fact end up getting a little bit above 8,000 per month cash in your business to right around the like 20K mark, you're set. You're fine. You're well off. You're rich, right? By most people's standards, you are doing better than like 94% of human beings on the planet. But yet we still kind of have this in the back of our mind of like, well, I still really want to make $1 million, or I still want my business to make $500,000. And we're not going to spend the remainder of this presentation focused on the logic or the emotional component of the why, but I've had each of you, and encouraged, right, to take the time to write out your North Star of what it is that you want your life to look like. And most of what you're going to evaluate when you do some form of self-reflection, you will find that it's really not about the number. It's about the experience that you have for yourself, for your family, and whatever that represents, right? And the number is just kind of like a byproduct of what that life probably looks like for you. So when I ended up achieving for myself above 40 to 50K per month, right now, last month we did about 70,000 cash collected. And I have to say that my life really hasn't changed all that much. I still pay myself a salary. It's nominal. I think it's ordinary. I pay myself about $4,500 now per month. Eventually, my goal, once we have additional employees, will be that I'm paying myself much more. Yes. And so I wrote that inside of my own North Star exercise. But when I did the math for myself and I evaluated what's the reason that I actually want to make, I'm telling myself, right? I want to see a deposit in my own personal bank account every month of like 50 grand or 30 grand or whatever the number is. it's not necessary. It's like extraneous. Now, for some people, maybe they want a Birkin bag and the Louis Vuitton luggage, and they want to go on trips to Bali once a month or something. And that works for some people, and that's cool. That's not a problem. It just so happens that's not really like the thing that appeals to me. So each of you, when you reflect, need to identify what's important to me really. Like, what do I really need to happen in my life? What do I really want that experience to look like? And then maybe there's a number associated with what that lifestyle looks like. And you're going to start to identify, oh, things are probably not congruent. So I don't have to, basically frustrate myself that I'm not at $300,000 per year yet. Or I don't need to frustrate myself that I'm not at 10 or 20K per month yet. And that's unfortunately something that only each of you can do for yourselves. But it requires an element of self-awareness. Okay. So that is one of the identity components that I really want to kind of like drive home in this workshop and this challenge here, is that as I'm speaking, some of what I am saying is resonating for you, probably. And if that's true, I want you to take a second and just kind of, not listen to what I'm saying and write whatever it is that comes to mind for you, because that's your inner self speaking, saying, yeah, that message is for me. Okay. So when I ended up achieving above the 50K mark, ultimately, this is right around the time when that big coaching business, we were doing about 5.5 million per year cash collected. And it was a really small team. I was one of like 6 people total in that business. And I was instrumental in creating systems and, coaching clients one-on-one. At one time, I even coached well over like 100 people on a Zoom room. And I would never advocate that for anybody here who's saying like, I'm going to do a group coaching program, I'm just going to scale this forever. I wouldn't encourage that, right? So this is why it's important, kind of like Farouk mentioned in days prior, that you need to get really clear on what is your lifestyle going to look like. Maybe you have a family, maybe you have kids, so you don't want to be working 80-hour weeks, right? So you've got to design the business around your life. Okay. So I ended up asking myself this question once they closed that business down, because they pivoted and decided to focus on a different niche. And that's totally cool. But I took that as my cue when I realized, when I do the numbers, I'm actually working 60 hours a week. I'm getting paid really well, but I know that there's something else out there for me. And since they're closing, that means that that's less people I can actually help. Right. And that was really impactful for me. So these are just a few of the faces of clients that I've worked with. And I picked them to be very specific because, to varying degrees, each of them has their own story. Each of them has, a background of, I was selling courses, or I already had a coaching program, but it had some element of unpredictability. Or I had a coaching, in Trey's case, he was actually already above 100K per month cash collected. He already had a team, but he didn't have all the systems down. And he was in fact dealing with some mindset issues. Okay. So this just reinforces what I was sharing with you all a little bit earlier, that it's not going to go away. Even if I magically could deposit in each of your accounts 40,000 per month right now, right? It's not going to go away not having mindset issues. Like, they still are there. It's not going to go away the necessity for you to show up for yourself and whatever your day looks like, whether it's I wake up at 4 or wake up at 6 or I wake up at 9 and then I have this routine, and that's not going to change, right? You're still going to need to have some form of a routine or a workflow or a system. You still most likely are going to need a coach or a mentor or somebody that you can lean on to support you through the process. You're still going to be you. The difference is that you're going to have to show up as that version of yourself, version 2.0 or 3.0, that is going to lead you in the direction of that January 1st, 2025 quality world North Star version of you. Right? So obviously you guys can, see these here. I love talking about Farouk. Before I continue, I just wanted to touch on this. I love talking about Farouk specifically because he is a professional drummer. He sold courses long before I ever coached him. So he already had a business that was successful, right? He was making some cash, like 500 to 1,000, and it supplemented his income on top of what he was already making from the professional drumming, right? And he would travel around and do gigs and stuff like that. And he and I, when we had a one-on-one strategy call in the very beginning of us working together, he did not believe that his program and access to him would be worth more than $2,000. He literally says in a video that I have as a case study, when I interviewed him, he literally said, Aiden, I thought you were out of your mind to tell me to go from, I'm making $500 a month with this coaching business where or course business, I'm sorry, where I'm telling people, here's how you do drums and here's how you hold the sticks and all of these things, to now I'm just coaching them, right? And giving feedback. And all of a sudden that's worth an extra $2,000. Who's going to pay that, right? That is really what I heard him say. And why am I sharing that? Well, I'm sharing that because I'm sure to some extent, Farouk, Selena, David, Asia, Naeem, I'm sure to some extent, each one of you in the VIP room can in fact relate, myself included at times, where we tell ourselves, who's going to buy that? Is this really worth that? Should I really, whatever the thing is that you're telling yourself that you want to aim for, and then you create doubt, right? And unfortunately, whenever we have any element of anxiety or doubt, what does that do? It creates self-sabotage and space for us to not take action. So it's basically throwing away our ability to get to that goal of what we say our life will look like on January 1, 2025. So I hope that's making sense. Before I continue, does everybody here, so you can put a 1 in the chat or a 2 in the chat, does everybody here have like a coaching business or an offer that they already are currently trying to sell? Perfect. So everybody, right? Everybody here can basically relate to what I just said. So let's go into, I am going to make this probably full screen because I think it's easier to look at. These people here that are in this room, each face represents, with one exception here, that would be Cameron. So Cameron and Danique and Bastian. So these people, but everybody else in the room paid money to be there. Most of them are individuals who paid over $36,000 to be in this mastermind program where I would provide coaching. This person, Jonathan, would provide check-ins where every other week it was a simple, hey, how is it going? What are you working on? And this was the sales trainer. Now, why do I bring that up? And everybody's smiling here, right? They're not smiling right after they spent all the money. But the reason why they're smiling is simply because these are individuals who either are currently millionaires, making in their existing coaching or consulting or course business, right? The thing you all are looking to build, these people are just a little bit further ahead on the road. It doesn't mean they're better than you. And I'm sure you see other faces in your feed when you go on Facebook or Instagram and you see all these like nice, pictures and people emphasizing the story that I shared earlier, the viral transformation post aspect, where it's like, here's how my life used to look like, but look, now everything is perfect. It's not true, right? Because we're all human. We're all subject to the human condition. So all these millionaires, they're just people. And the difference between them and whatever you're going through right now, whatever you're facing, is that they looked at a series of goals or their North Star and decided to execute, right? And that is, you're going to find that even in the real world, meaning not online, but in the real world, that 99% of people, maybe it's closer to 98, to be fair, I don't know, there's probably some margin for error, but the majority of people are not going to do the hard thing that they perceive to be too hard, right? Each one of us has challenges in our life that are going on right now, right? Whether our family members need therapy, we are not living in the home conditions or housing conditions that we want. Maybe our car is not the greatest, and sometimes it gives us car troubles, and then we have to go get repairs done. We look at the balance sheet or bank statement and it's not quite what we want it to be. and we're trying to figure out how to ends meet, and choosing each one of you to be an entrepreneur and show up for yourselves in whatever your capacity and commitment can look like right now to get you close to that vision of your life, right? According to the North Star exercise. You choosing to pursue and choose you is the thing that is the differentiating factor between the ordinary person who's just like, well, I don't know, I tried a course, I read this book, it just didn't work out, so entrepreneurship's not for me. Or I sold a couple coaching programs, definitely under $1,000, but yeah, everybody's broke. Nobody's going to pay me $5,000. Right? The thing that it comes down to is, are you going to take action? Are you going to believe in yourself? And are you going to trust yourself, even when it's hard? Right? Furthermore, and so I'm really grateful that Farouk obviously invited me here, and I'm really excited because he's done so well for himself. And I do want to say that I think I played a little role in that, but I know for a fact that Farouk is the one who showed up every day, right? When I wasn't on any coaching calls, like after the coaching call with Farouk or after the group calls that he would show up to, or the workshop or the masterclass, Farouk was left to his own devices, right? He still had to put in the effort and the energy. And building your business, eventually you will recognize and realize as time goes on that you're not going to be able to achieve $1 million by yourself. You will eventually need a team member or other assets to create leverage to get your time back. Eventually, you will need a mentor or a coach if you don't have one right now. And if you're not in a state where you can, get one, Farouk and I were talking about podcasts a little bit earlier, right? You've got to start where you're at. Like the way that we tell other people and clients possibly, well, meet them where they're at. You need to give yourself that same compassion and that same understanding based on whatever your circumstances are. There's nothing wrong with aiming for these big goals, these big things, but we also want to acknowledge and appreciate where am I right now? And what can I do to get 1% better every day to show up for myself? All right. So these are some screenshots of my own wins. Now, what I want to emphasize here is not sexy. Okay. The thing that makes all of this possible, making lots of money, having the business, having the house, having an office, having a team, buying software, being able to run challenges every week and send thousands of emails and just all these things that you see gurus do, right? There are definitely gurus bigger than me. There's definitely gurus that are bigger than Farouk. There's definitely gurus that are bigger than each of you. And that's never going to change, right? It's never going to change because there's enough for all of us. So what's it going to take for you all to be able to, so this is the screenshot I was telling you all about that I was pretty sure it was more than $180 that I had charged Stephanie, but here it is right there, right? $197. And to go from like $197 to, I'm charging Dennis $3,500, et cetera. These are experiences ultimately that influenced and shaped the way I show up for myself, right? And the way I chose to do the boring work. And I'm fairly confident. I don't know each of your lives. I'm not a fly on the wall, but I'm fairly confident that each one of you have moments, and anybody watching this right now, moments where you tell yourself, I don't want to. I'll just do it tomorrow. Well, maybe if I finish this Netflix episode, I'll do it right after. And then other people, including myself, sometimes we get stuck with like, let me just scroll. Let me post something really quick and then let me scroll. Right? Distraction. Unfortunately, those things are not going to move the needle. So this is where we have to be really skillful as much as possible regarding boundaries, not just for strangers, but for ourselves. Where we say, I'm not going to hit the snooze button anymore. If I tell myself I'm going to go for a run, I'm going to go for a run. Oh, I'm sore from the run the other day. Okay, then go walk, right? Only you are in control of these decisions, but it all starts with you trusting yourself and believing in yourself. So before I go to the next slide, the question is, are each of you going to show up for yourself? If you are, say yes in the chat. Awesome. I got a thumbs up from David. He's ready to go. He's like, yeah, let's do it. All right. So the recipe for success. Okay. It's definitely about trusting the process. I'm sure many of you have heard some version of the Pareto's principle where it's like the 20% is the thing that moves the needle, but the 80% is the thing that you also need to have as part of the equation that contributes to you being able to accomplish your goal. But it's the 20% that actually makes the difference. So what I would encourage is that, and I have found that unfortunately with all the people I have coached, right, I have found a pattern that everyone who ends up being below 40K, it's not because their strategy sucked. It's not because they ran a webinar instead of a challenge. It's not because they did organic marketing instead of paid ads. It's not because they did email and they didn't warm up the email versus this other method, right? It's not the strategy that's at fault. It's when this ends up being in reverse. When instead of taking action, driving your business and showing up for it, you end up staying, the 80% becomes the thinking and the planning and the writing. And so when people are messaging you to do their own version of organic, right? We end up, if this for you is 80% instead of this being 80%, the doing. Oftentimes you might, if you go look at your own chats, you'll probably start to realize the pattern that I'm talking about, where you tell strangers or family members or, whoever, maybe your coach, yeah, I'm still planning this thing. I'm still figuring this out. I'm going to get started. I'm going to do this thing next week. And that right there, if that's you and that's something that is happening for you, or that's, you go look at your chats with strangers and you start, like, they're asking you, what do you do? Nice to connect, yada, yada. And you say those keywords: trying, started, figuring out, testing, beginning, right? All these keywords that indicate that you're not actually taking action. You're in control of changing your narrative 100%. And also creating an authority frame in that same chat. Farouk knows I used to coach people on this all the time, to create the gap right then and there in the conversation, right? Especially if you do organic. So what I want to recommend, if any one of you or all of you feel like that's me, actually, yeah, I do a lot of thinking and planning and procrastinating, and I'm not sure, I feel stuck, this thing, whatever it is. Okay, cool. Just like we took 5 minutes today to write out your North Star exercise, what you need to do for yourself on a weekly basis, and you could just put it in your calendar, is some version of deep work where you just brain dump everything that you need or you feel has to get done. And you go through that list and you say to yourself by evaluating, and if you're not sure, ask your coach. Okay. But you go through that list and you identify what 1 or 2 things out of this list of 80 things is actually going to generate cash flow. And even if it's uncomfortable, you cannot put it off. You need to do it. That's how you flip the script on this right here, this ratio or this equation. Okay. In order for that to work, you have to acknowledge that distractions, scrolling, Netflix, snoozing, and all these other things that might contribute or hinder the reason why you're not where you want to be right now, they just need to be set aside. I'm not saying delete Netflix and never watch it ever again. I love Netflix. I just recently started watching Black Mirror, right? But it's because I've given myself permission to do that because of all the work I've done prior. I try to gamify my experience, and you guys want to definitely probably do some version of that for yourselves, where if, let's say, you're doing organic marketing or you're doing public speaking or you're doing email marketing or whatever it is, you do the hard thing first that's going to move the needle for at least 30 minutes to an hour and a half. And then for 15 to 30 minutes right after that, you've got to do something that you enjoy, whatever it is. right? And that's going to tell your brain, even though this process is hard, because the hard's never going to go away, the challenging experience of life and growing a business or having a family or me waking up every day, that's not going to go away, right? Like there are challenges you're going to face every day. You can't eliminate risk 1,000%. But if you can show up for yourself and gamify things, you're absolutely going to be miles closer to your goal than you are right now. Okay. All right. So since everybody's ready, I just wanted to, share a little bit about what changed for me, right? Because everybody else shared about family and stuff. And I think it's really important that this isn't just about do this, do that, and that's it, end of class. I think it's important to recognize and humanize the experience here, So the thing that really changed for me when I got my act together, it's when we found out my wife was pregnant. And I was like, oh, but the agency isn't really figured out yet. This is a bad timing, So a lot had to change. Like, even as I'm saying this and sharing it with you guys, like I'm starting to kind of like tear up a little bit because, and I'm not a crier, but I'm starting to tear up a little bit because it brings back the memories of that time frame where I was like, oh shoot, this isn't just about me anymore. My vision of my life and like this experience that I have. I want to drive that Ferrari. I want to have this nice fancy house. And I had to stop being selfish. I had to stop letting my ego get in the way. Right. And that meant that my beliefs shifted because my vision, my quality world, my vision of what my life, a good quality life would look like, positive experiences, I had to reshape those. Because before we got pregnant, I didn't actually see myself having kids, right? I lived in Texas. I was on my parents' couch playing video games occasionally. I would go to work, come back home, want to party with my friends, and then go to sleep after that and wake up and do it all again, basically, right? So to go from that lifestyle to, I'm going to change my whole environment. I meet a wonderful woman, my wife, Melissa. We get married. We get pregnant. Just my life shifted. I was not the same person, even though I look the same. I mean, now I have some gray hair. Yes. But, I'm not the same person internally. Right. And the same thing can be said about each of you, David, Asya, Selena, Farouk. Right. So the way that you make that possible is by understanding and recognizing that your priorities, whatever that is, you want to show up for your family, you want to have a different house, you want to have a different car, you want to buy some place on the beach or wherever, you want to overcome some of that money mindset block. It's going to start with your habits, right? It's going to start with reframing. You know what? Yeah, traditionally, we're not good with money in my culture or where I live, or my family didn't really talk about money. And so therefore it's kind of a taboo topic, but the change is going to start with me. I'm going to trust myself to start looking at my bank statement every week. I'm going to schedule that in my calendar or whatever it is, right? I'm not saying that's what you have to do, Selena, but it's just an example. And David, you mentioned that you're planning on coordinating things so that I believe it was your son can get some therapy, right? And so if that, let's say making phone calls and coordinating things, you've got a lot to juggle. You've got a lot of plates in the air and you've been putting off making phone calls or paperwork or something, whatever it is, right? Then it starts with our habits. In order for us to be able to move that needle, I just have to make that happen. Or I believe earlier you had mentioned also regarding having sessions with people and not really knowing when to insert yourself and kind of how to frame things so that the session would obviously not be a free strategy session all the time, right? And so again, that comes down to habits. And for me, when I first got started, I was scared of sales. I remember in my very first apartment, the thing that I loved about it, even though it was super tiny, that I showed you guys a picture where I slept on the floor, it had mirrors, right? The closet doors had mirrors. And I would practice talking to myself what I was going to say. So for David, that might be some habit for you, right? That you want to basically practice like a certain phrase or off the cuff remarks if it comes up. So then you don't feel uncomfortable or hot under the collar or anxious whatsoever if somebody were to challenge, well, why is this not free? Or I thought, and then whatever it is, right? So again, that just kind of comes back to habits. Now, the other thing that shifted for me was obviously my goals. I do drive a nice car. Yes, it's not the Ferrari yet, but I do drive a nice car. But I realized over time that my goal wasn't things. I basically had to learn that the hard way. And that's not everybody's lesson, but it was my lesson. I realized in order for me to have the ability to have a successful business and a healthy marriage and a good quality relationship with my kids, I had to create boundaries for myself. And part of that meant I couldn't be glued to my phone all the time. Because yes, I had to post stories. Yes, I had to post content. Yes, I had to do DMs. I mean, there was a time when I did it all, right? Thankfully, I've built up a team to help me, but there was a time where I had to do it all. And it took having a serious conversation with my kids, with myself, with my wife, and even my parents who I still text every day. I've got to focus between this time and this time. And when I'm, in this room, it means that I'm still working or I'm busy. And when I'm not between these hours, start to finish, you guys have my undivided attention. Because what good was building a business if I couldn't give back to my family or spend time with them, right? It defeated the whole purpose of why I got started. So I hope that this has inspired you all to recognize that you all do have the ability to choose. You get to choose your life. Yes. You also get to design and choose how your business looks. It doesn't have to be, I have 500 clients, I'm doing a $300,000 per month, type of situation, because the reality that doesn't get advertised, but I'm here to tell you the truth because I've coached at this point 750 plus people, is yes, any strategy can work. Challenges can work. Email marketing can work. Organic marketing can work. DM cold outbound can work. Paid ads to reel, to messenger, opt-ins with a VSL, you name it. I've coached people on every single model there is, even live webinars. So I'm not going to say, and, tell you a not truth, that only organic marketing works or only challenges work, because that's not true, right? You've got to choose whichever model or strategy fits you, but it only works if you do.
So much of content and so much of valuable information. So thank you for that. I'm not going to share what I wrote exactly in the North Star exercise, but I am a crier. So when you asked us to do that, the emotional part of it was, I thought I'm very selfish, but everything that I wrote was centered around family and relationships, which makes me realize that obviously that is my focus. And when you were talking about with Selena, the things that come up for a reason. And then you said about why are we creating businesses and all of this? It's for the life that we want to create with our families. So when you asked us to do that exercise, what came up for me was relationships, my family, my extended family, some financial aspects, but not so much. And then around my friendships and my circle and my support system. So it just made me realize how vitally important relationships actually are to me, more than I thought they were.
That's beautiful. That's wonderful. I love that. And I'm not quite sure what, your method is right now for client acquisition, but I think it's fair to say, especially in the economic climate that we're in and all of the fact that everybody here basically has a course or a coaching business or consulting of some kind, is that relationships are integral, right? Like the way that we see each other and we model for people who we don't know, we call them prospects, right? The way we model for them that we're there and that we're consistent and that we show up and that we are listening is also a determining factor in how successful we will be. So I think this is a wonderful moment for you to kind of take that in and absorb fully. Relationships really are basically the basis or foundation that need to be one of my core values in my personal brand or my business, the way I help my clients, etc. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Did anybody else have anything else that they added to their North Star exercise or have any questions?
Not a question. Sorry if I was supposed to put it in the chat.
That's okay.
But the money thing is interesting. The money
Okay.
conversation stuff. And I just wonder whether actually there's something in it, in building I'm not wording this, but it's late. Like a stepped money thing. So like,
Yeah.
not just the top, but what the
Yeah.
blocks are, like the milestones almost. And that makes the business of money feel, it's a bit of a dirty word here. And it makes it feel less greedy
Got it.
if I do it in pieces.
Okay. Well, can I make a recommendation? Do I have your permission to
Absolutely.
make a recommendation? You can write it down. So in the very beginning for me, and this is something that I don't know where you each are kind of like in that milestone or phases, but something that came up for me that I recognized internally and also while coaching other people is that oftentimes many of us, I'm going to give you the background first, and then I'll give the recommendation. Many of us have some elements of kind of like a block or a difficult time talking about money, especially if you didn't come from like, I didn't go to a private school. I went to an okay school. It was decent. It was a good neighborhood. I had a home, like I had an okay upbringing. It wasn't horrific or anything. And I definitely wasn't homeless, but it's also not like things were overflowing or abundant, or I could tell my mom, let me borrow your credit card. I didn't have that growing up. Right. So going from I'm having an ordinary type of income, like back home, ordinary would be about 2,500 to 4K per month. Going from that kind of income to all of a sudden, I'm starting to see people are paying me, each 3,500 to, like, as you saw, 15K plus. And I have this plastered basically all on my Facebook, and my YouTube. So it's like the history is there, and when you go from this like ground level experience where money is kind of a taboo topic because not many of us have it, or you don't really have easy access to it. And then all of a sudden you're surrounded with people who they just talk about thousands and thousands of dollars, or you're in a room with people who are paying tens of thousands of dollars to just simply be there, right? Or have access to, get coaching every other week for 30 minutes to an hour. It's mind-boggling, right? And it does this thing to you where internally you're like, wait, who am I? Why are people paying me that? What if I don't deliver? Am I good enough? I need to add more to this course or this program. It happens to all of us. Like I'm actually at this moment in time. So this is what I shared with you guys earlier. I don't know if you missed it, but I had, as you saw, changed my pricing many, many times. Right. And before the last 5 clients that I ended up taking on, my price point was definitely less than 6K. And I started to realize all of these clients were paying me in full and have been and love getting results. Like they get results. They love working with me. And after the first couple interactions, they're like on their own. It's almost like I don't hear from them. It's not because they're unhappy. It's because they're like, okay, you solved my problem. Goodbye. And so now I have a new issue in my business that I need to solve to like keep them engaged, right? Retention. But that for me was a deciding factor. I'm going to charge $11,000. And for you, that you might not be in that position where you're like, I can't charge that right this second. That might not be the situation for you, right? But it's like you said, baby steps. And so this is the recommendation I want to make for you. It's a lady, you may have heard of her, Denise Duffield Thomas. Her nickname is DDT. And I ended up getting all of her books, all of her audiobooks, because my wife, who also happens to have some of these like money mindset stuff, my wife actually grew up poor. Okay. So coming into the marriage with somebody who was like, we have to hold on to every dime. We can't have debt, and I'm not saying that it's wrong. Okay. It just means that my wife and I have very different perceptions about money. This lady, Denise Duffield Thomas, has lots and lots of books. If you don't like cursing, it might not be for you, but there are definitely other options. You could just like look inside of the, Amazon and it'll make recommendations. But this was
That
really,
wouldn't worry me.
Okay. This was really helpful because as I was listening to her speak, and my wife was listening, right? But I was in the car as well. It left an impression on me as well. And it helped me get through those steps as you're describing, recognizing I am worth money. You know, maybe not me like as a person, but the value I bring to the market is worth money. And it's worth quite a lot of money as long as I am helping my clients and I'm showing up and my intentions are pure. Right. So I hope that's helpful to you, Selena.
Thank you. Yeah, it is. Thanks.
David. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So with the North Star exercise, I've done this kind of thing before. And even as I'm contemplating it now, like it feels to me like it has like this mixed charge to it. So it's like, okay, aspirational, yes, you know, having a home here and this thing's for my family and blah blah blah. So there's part of it that feels like, okay, good, this gives me direction, but there's part of it feels like I've done this before, I'm setting myself up for failure again. So how do you I guess, what is the size, or how do you make it so it's a good stretch goal without it being overwhelming or potentially discouraging? Because it's like, oh, it's too much.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful question. So, I mean, I can't answer for you as a person. Like this one goal about going to Bali is bad, throw it away. And this other one about taking care of your family is good, keep it, right? We don't live in a black and white world, unfortunately. So I can't be that. I can't discriminate against all of the things that you ended up saying. You internally would have to decide for yourself what aligns the most with your core values. I would encourage you would extrapolate from that little section of what you wrote, pluck that out first. And that probably needs to be A level priorities. And then everything else, maybe it's not values driven, like, oh, I want to go to Bali, I want to travel, I want to be, you know, I want to read 10 books or whatever the thing is, right? That's probably priority B because it's not going to benefit your business. It's not going to generate cash flow. It's not going to impact your children directly or you. It would create a well-rounded experience, sure. But I think oftentimes a lot of us, myself included, kind of get really like down on ourselves when we end up saying, I've got this list of 40 things that I want to do or that I see my life looking like, and I didn't accomplish all 40 things, therefore I fail. Well, I mean, you have to recognize like your life is going to go through seasons, right? Sometimes you have a winning season. And so maybe that winning season is you got the therapy for your son. You ended up being able to like book a trip, and maybe it's not Bali, but it's somewhere else, right? Near a beach or something. And so that can still be a win. So giving yourself permission to acknowledge what is actually a priority and what's kind of like not a priority, but a nice to have is definitely something that I would encourage that you probably, kind of contemplate a little bit further. And then there's going to be some, and I'm not going to be able to do it for you right this second, right? Because it's a David thing. And Farouk knows because I think I've talked to him about this as well. But the self-work, right? Like realizing David is where he needs to be. And the fact that David is showing up for himself proves that he's not going to fail. If David has a coach or David is getting whatever resources he needs, he's focused on himself, he's invested with time and energy, not just finances, he's going to achieve the goal. Like you've got to give yourself some element of compassion. And I'm not going to be able to like, let me impress this upon you right this second and you magically are cured. I'm sorry, but like, I can't do that, right? I'm not a magician. I wish I were, because then I'd be like, fling, and you'd be in Bali, But I think for myself, this is something I had to learn the hard way, because you mentioned earlier about being a co-parent, and I had to experience that the hard way. My wife, when we met, she had a daughter from a previous marriage, and the daughter's a bit older. And that meant that her father, my wife's ex-husband, is also in our life. Right. And it's this thing that unfortunately in the very beginning of our marriage, I had a lot of scarcity mindset. I dealt with a lot of issues because the agency was up and down. I was like, no pregnancy. It's too soon. My life can't change right now. Like, I'm just let me be selfish for a little bit longer. Obviously, that's not what I said, but looking back, I'm realizing that's what was going on. And me being willing to be a good quality co-parent was not a type A priority for me. It was not at the top of the list. It was not level A whatsoever. I actually expressed a lot of jealousy from them having my wife and her ex-husband having a good quality relationship, right? And it was all for the betterment of my stepdaughter, who I love to pieces. And I had to realize the hard way and do the self-work. And so that's why I'm saying it's not going to be an overnight kind of thing where you decide, what are my priorities? What do I focus on? How do I make sure I don't fail again? You just have to kind of put them in buckets and give yourself compassion, because being a good quality co-parent, if right now some things are strenuous, it doesn't happen overnight. Realizing and learning, okay, this is how I'm going to grow my business and have predictability, that also doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, right? All of these things are habit-based and belief-based ultimately.
Okay, thank you.
100%. Awesome. So, I mean, it's been a pleasure. Thank you all for having me. You've been wonderful. You know, your hospitality, I appreciate it massively. Farouk, was there anything else, brother, that you need me to do, or?
You know, pick your brain, ask you the questions. Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm, you know, I'm sitting here and I'm like, just like, wow, you know, this is just absolutely amazing. I'm truly grateful, and I'm, you know, truly happy that you took the time to, you know, to speak to my audience, you know, to speak to these lovely people that've taken the time to sit here. And I was highly engaged. You know, I have a lot of respect for you, and you know, when you said to me, hey, listen, you're gonna come in and you'd be happy to do a bit of a talk on my challenge, I was like, wow, super excited. And I'm going to invite you some others as well. But
yeah, of course, happy to.
Major lessons out of all of this is that we got to dig deep. We got to look at ourselves, because everything sits with us and how we choose to move forward. And anything's possible, because myself included, you know, we all have been through the trenches, and we find a way to dig ourselves out, and we keep moving, and we keep moving, and we add a little bit of firepower to where we are in that phase. We keep moving, and we keep doing that. So, you know, what got highlighted is, if we have these gaps, find a way to fill these gaps so that you can keep going. Otherwise, you're going to just stay on the same spot, and you're not going to get anything done. You're going to get to a stage where you're going to resent the very thing that you love, because you're not getting what you're getting or what you desire. You're not reaching that North Star. I've got a North Star as well. My daily practice is, I've got about 6 lines that I write every single day, sometimes even twice a day. And if I get another gap, the third time. And it involves things like, you know, improving my faith, improving my connection with the one that has created me, improving my relationships with my wife and my kids, being more engaged, being more present, being more caring, having more fun with them. And then, of course, you know, making more of an impact. I want to stand on stage one day, and I want to do this massive thing. I don't know which stage, but I'm going to be on a stage talking to a massive crowd of people and inspiring them and empowering them. That's one of the things I want to do. And I want to make lots of money while doing that. Maybe I want to buy a nice car or whatever. You know, I've had those things, but like Aiden said earlier, you know, you eventually get to a stage where, like, they don't mean anything, because once you buy it, the novelty eventually wears off. I mean, I've had so many different luxury items, and eventually don't really get the satisfaction out of it. This year is the true satisfaction for me. Just being here. This is what energizes me. Never ever in my life would I go and work, well, don't call it work, but sit and spend hours fulfilling my life's purpose when I was working in the corporate job. It's like 9 to 5, that's it, no extra. Here, I don't look at the time. I just do what I do, so I enjoy it. So to conclude on this, Aiden, thank you very much for your time and for your insights, for your inspiration. And I hope that everyone else has had a great time. And yeah, I know it's getting a bit late. I know we were going to chat, but I think we'll conclude on this because it's getting late. But thank you again, Aiden. And
thank you, everybody, for having me. Appreciate you. All right. See ya.
Have a good day and have a good evening.